Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last little while, a couple of different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of modern, fruited, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers, but also for their big Imperial stouts as well. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before. The sub-style, though, is one that I haven't tried, and it is a sub-style that I very much enjoy, potentially one of my favourites on the darker end of the beer spectrum. So, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to the US like I said. We're going to go to the state of New York and up to the northwestern part of the state to a place called Rochester, quite a big city of course, but we're going to go a little bit to the south of the city to a place called Avon to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Mortalis Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called As Above, So Below. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one's an Imperial Stout brewed with coffee and marshmallows. Now, this is yet another beer that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimsha in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. They get the Mortalis things quite regularly, but this is one I think they've had on one or two occasions before. But yeah, I was just very, very curious to see what this was going to have in store for us, because I've heard this one is really pretty damn good, and I do love an Imperial coffee stout. Coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts to put in beer. They're almost as diverse as hops, so if you haven't tried some Imperial coffee stouts yet, I highly recommend that you do. But yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys again and to have a go at this big Imperial coffee stout. So let's crack on with it and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mortalis Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt do more from these guys at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist, along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because we do get a good selection of American beers here in Hong Kong, and do make sure that you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Mortalis Brewing Company once again then. So, Mortalis Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in a little town called Avon in New York, which is to the south of Rochester in the kind of northwestern part of the state, and Rochester is of course right on the coast if you like. But the brewery was founded back in 2017 by a group of 5 co-owners. So this is Paul Grenier, Gretchen Salber Grenier, Dave Lukenbach, Missy Salber Lukenbach, and then Jason Kiefer, who is Paul's childhood friend. But Paul and Dave met through their wives, and they shared an interest in beer, and so they began to homebrew together, which they did for about 10 years prior to starting the brewery, and so they were the ones who started off the brew team. So Melissa is the brewery accounts specialist, Gretchen is the operations officer, and Jason is the chief financial officer and legal consultant. But they participated in a competition called Brew in Livingston business plan, which was a business plan competition, and that was started by the Livingston County Economic Development Office, and this secured them some state funds to start up the brewery. And they also received quite a little bit of funding from a Kickstarter campaign that they did as well. This raised $31,000, and they started out with a very small 5-barrel brewing system along with a 1-barrel pilot system for doing more experimental batches. But the brewery opened its doors in August of 2018, and they soon added jobs Josh Bauerlein to the brewing team, who had many years of home brewing experience. But over the course of 2019, they produced around 1,000 American barrels, which is about 160,000 litres for those of us who use the metric system, which I will say is the correct way to do it. Makes more sense based on water and all that jazz. But over the coming years, they began travelling to support, to promote their beers at different beer festivals, and they built up a very, very strong reputation for themselves, particularly when it came to the Imperial Stouts and the big sort of modern fruity juicy sour beers. Recently they've also added Joey Loenig to their brewing team as well, and they've been starting to brew a few other styles too from what I've seen. But over the years they've continued to expand the brewery infrastructure and get their beers out there a little bit more, and as of October 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 655 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Mortalis Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, now we can take a breath. Bit humid in here actually, but yeah. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So this one is a 473 milliliter can, which is 1 American pint, or North American we should say, because the Canadians use this measurement too. Plain silver top on the can there. You can see some of the stuff on the side of the beer there as well, as above so below, and it tells you, like I said earlier, this one is an Imperial Stout brewed with coffee and marshmallow. But yeah, you can see the Livingston thing on the side there too, which is quite nice. But yeah, as I've mentioned here in many a coffee stout review before, coffee beans are awesome because they're almost as diverse as hops when you use them as an adjunct, because obviously you've got the different type of bean, you can grow it in different soils and places with different water profiles and all this sort of thing, and all of that is going to affect the flavour. But one of the big variables when it comes to coffee beans is the maso, the meters above sea level, and apparently the higher the altitude at which you grow the coffee, the more likely you are to get these kind of fruity and aromatic type flavours. But of course you've got places like Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, Kenya, Tanzania, Vietnam. All of these places are growing some really, really interesting coffee beans, and they all taste pretty damn different actually when you try them in different beers. But I do recommend that you check out some of the Brazilian Imperial coffee stouts if you can come across those. The Brazilians have got a great craft beer scene and of course some great coffee to put in it as well. But yeah, like I said earlier, this one comes in at 10% ABV. They're using local coffee in this one from what I understand, or a locally roasted coffee I should say, and some marshmallows. So let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. This should be really quite interesting. But yeah, I will say this beer was a little bit pricier. I think I paid 160 Hong Kong dollars for this, which is about £16 sterling, probably about what, 18 euros, maybe $20 American, something like that. This beer was definitely one of my fuck it, why not moments. So yeah, hopefully it is pretty good. But yeah, we've got most of the beer out and into the glass. At this point, this is my Friday night sipper because I'm staying in because I'm too tired to go out. So yeah, this one should hopefully be a really nice way to end my week because it's needed. But yeah, as you can see, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial Stout. We've got maybe about 80% of the beer out and into the glass just now. Before the head disappears, you can see that it's poured with a lovely kind of 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head there. I'll just bring that up to the camera and let you have a wee look before it disappears. You can see some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid. There are a few foamier ones going further up, but yeah, it's that lovely dark ebony rosewood colour as you would expect of the Imperial Stout. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts and Imperial Porters, it's very, very, very difficult to change the colour of these beers with different adjuncts and things. I've only ever seen that done once, and that was an Estonian Imperial Porter or Stout from Puasta, where they used beets in it, and it had this kind of purple colour to it. It was a little bit crazy. But yeah, the coffee and the marshmallow in this one is really not going to do much to affect the colour of this beer. But if we shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi sort of hue to it almost. You know, very dark chestnut or rosewood is another way to describe that. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one or two bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones floating up toward the bottom of the head there. But all in all, it looks pretty nice, I have to say, and kind of what you would expect from an Imperial Stout, in all honesty. Little bit of haze to it, of course, and I'm guessing it's probably got a bit of oat and wheat in it, thinking about just when I consider the other stuff that these guys brew. So yeah, probably quite a little bit of wheat and oat in this one, which is giving the beer that greater opacity or opaqueness, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I think we don't really need to say much more about the appearance of this one. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma of this beer then. I'm really, really curious about this. Ooh, that smells really nice. Yeah. Yeah, it is basically like a kind of sweeter. It's like a kind of combination of an Imperial Milk Stout and an Imperial Coffee Stout, this one. Now, as I've said on the channel many a time before, you've got a few ways that you can play with Imperial Stouts. You can do things like you can give them a longer wort boil, which is going to give you a more kind of dry, leathery sort of character to them. You can increase the flavour complexity that way. You can barrel age them, of course, where you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get more infused flavours too. But you can also do things like double and even triple mashes if you really want to, which is going to give you that really big, thick, sticky mouthfeel. And of course, it's going to put the ABV up quite a little bit. These days there's a lot of people producing Imperial pastry stouts, and I have to admit those are a bit of a hit or a miss for me. I don't like that kind of marzipan-y and kind of granola flavour that some of them have. It's just not for me, in all honesty. But yeah, the way that this one comes across is really, really nice. I'm a big fan of the old school RISs, the Imperial Milk Stouts and the Imperial Coffee Stouts, and this one, just in its aroma, I think technically speaking this will be a pastry stout, but it comes across as like a mixture of an Imperial Milk Stout and an Imperial Coffee Stout. So yeah, something to be aware of with this particular beer, but it smells really damn good actually. Yeah, it gives you everything you'd want. It really is. It's very sweet and very smooth. And you get the coffee bean out of it, and you can smell the sort of marshmallow and vanilla type qualities. But yeah, let's just break the aroma of this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the thing. But yeah, so the backbone of this beer, if we go down into it, I will say it does smell like it's double mash, but it could just be lactose and a bunch of oats and things. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, you can smell a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. Not too much, right enough. But there are little elements of kind of wood for sure. So there's a wee bit of a woody kind of backbone to this one, but the wood has this really kind of pecan, like nutty type character to it. Almonds maybe as well, almonds and pecans really coming out of this one. So the woody character that I'm picking up gets more and more nutty the more that you smell of it too. There is a little touch of like a sweet rye bread to this one, but mainly the malty backbone comes across like a sort of sponge cake, like a chocolate vanilla kind of sponge cakey character. You could say brownie as well, in all honesty. So yeah, the malty backbone of this beer is like sort of sponge cakey, yeah, really quite sponge cakey, brownie like. I think that's definitely fair to say in this one. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this beer, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, you do, as I say, you do get more of a almondy pecan sort of thing out of this one as you smell it. There's maybe a little bit of wholemeal brown bread in there as well. A lot of chocolate as well. The chocolatey side of this beer, I would say, it's maybe like a 50-60% cocoa chocolate. It's got a little bit of dark chocolate element to it, but not overly much, I would say. So yeah, you've got a little bit of a kind of dark chocolate note to this one, 50-60% cocoa, as I said, and then yeah, you've got some really nice milk chocolatey character coming out of this one too, which is quite nice. So yeah, a good mix of stuff in this one. But yeah, on top of that, on top of the chocolatey side of things, you've got a little bit of you've got a little bit of brown sugary character coming out of this one. And I will say, it doesn't come across as if it's had an overly long wort boil, but there are some signs that it might have had at least 6 hours or something like that. So yeah, the brown sugary notes you get out of this one, there is a degree of leatheriness to them, but not too much, as I say. So you've got that little bit of leathery brown sugar in there. There's definitely some sweet toasty caramel in there. A bit more of that kind of deeper treacle molasses type quality as well. Some biscuity notes. But yeah, the thing that makes me think that this beer is more double mash than long wort boil is the fact that the aroma is really sticky and really kind of almost oily in a sense. So that's really what's making me think that. I think we've covered pretty much everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. At the back of the nose, you start to get some of the yeasty characters coming out of this one. Yeah, so there's a wee bit of that yeasty note to it, and it's a little bit, I will say it's a little bit granola-like, and as I've said before, when it comes to the Imperial pastry stouts, the granola thing is something that I'm not the greatest fan of. So the yeasty side of this beer for me, it has got a little bit more of a kind of browny, brown, bready graininess to it, a little bit of a kind of granola character for sure, but yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is quite interesting. Yeah, it gets more grainy and more sort of granola-like the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, quite an interesting combination of things going on in this one. But yeah, I like that. This beer, the malty and yeasty side of things in this one is pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't think we need to say much more about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's go on and focus on the hoppy side of things. For me, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of beer styles. So yeah, for me, the hoppy side of this beer, it's a little touch earthy, a little bit woody as well, and there's a wee tiny touch of like, there's a little touch of floral note to it, but mainly it's kind of grassy. The green component in this one really takes a back seat to everything else, in all honesty. So yeah, the green component really takes a back seat to all the other stuff that's going on in this beer, to be quite honest. But the fruity side of the beer is quite interesting. I mean, for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's quite, there's a lot of like, plum in this one, quite a little bit of fig, blackcurrant and blackberry. These are all things that you'd expect. And I think we'll get more out of the fruitiness when we actually taste this beer, in all honesty. But yeah, aroma-wise, it goes together really, really nicely. And you do get more and more of the fruitiness coming out of this one, the more that you smell of it too. Now, the big elephant in the room with this one is, of course, the coffee. We haven't mentioned that yet, and with good reason. I was thinking with this one that the coffee note in the aroma is actually very, very subtle, so I was waiting to see if my nose would start to pick up more and more of it as I went through the aroma, and it does. It does come out a little bit more. It shows its head that little bit more. So yeah, for me, the coffee notes in this one are at the back of the nose, mixing in with the yeasty side of the beer, and it's got like a very smooth kind of earthiness to it, and I think it's contributing a wee bit to some of the red kind of fruity notes there. I think there's a wee touch of aromaticity to the coffee bean as well, but yeah, the coffee side of things is really at the back of the nose with this beer. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is is really quite nice. It is actually really, really quite nice in this one. So yeah, aroma-wise, if I think about this in comparison to other Imperial coffee stouts that I've had before, this one is very, very sweet. I think probably a lot of people would say this is a pastry stout, and I could see why, in all honesty. But yeah, it comes across to me as being like a combination of Imperial milk stout and Imperial coffee stout, but a lovely aroma to it. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the As Above, So Below, a 10% Imperial stout with coffee and marshmallows in it, from Mortalis Brewing Company in Avon, near Rochester in New York State over in America. Let's get stuck into this. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh, that's very nice. That is really damn good. This one, when I had a little look at its rating on Untappd before I bought it, because I was, obviously it was a little touch more expensive, of course. But yeah, I wanted to check that it was worth it, and it had a lot of ratings, and its rating was 4.4. Immediately after trying this one, you can see why this is so highly rated. This is a lovely, lovely beer. I'm going to enjoy this for the rest of my evening. So yeah, do I regret paying so much for it? Nah. It was a fuck it, why not moment that I do not regret. So yeah, quite happy with that. So yeah, here we go. I will say straight away, very, very smooth and very creamy Imperial stout, this one. That's the first impression that it gives me. And the aroma that you get out of this one, the things you expect from that aroma flavour wise do come out. It's a stout that's a little bit more kind of subtle and just very smooth and sippable, in all honesty. It kind of reminds me of the flavour that you have after eating a nice little bit of a nice little bit of chocolate cake, like a more kind of creamy sort of chocolate cake. That's really what you're getting out of this one. Then there's just a wee subtle coffee aftertaste to it. That's really the kind of vibe that this beer gives off, but it is really pretty damn good. So big thumbs up to Mortalis for this one. So let's do as we always do then, and just break the beer down and describe it for you that little bit more in depth, if you like. So middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer. So the backbone of the beer for me, you've got that nice little bit of bread crusty character in there. And for me, I don't think it's really rye bread, in honesty. I think it's more of like a kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready character that forms the backbone of this beer. But at the same time, you could also argue that it's like a kind of cake edge, that little bit of cake that gets stuck to the paper or on the edge of the baking tray or whatever. Kind of a little bit like that. But yeah, that's the backbone of your beer. As you come further forward on that middle third of your palate, you're going to get a little bit of woodiness in the base of the beer too, and there's maybe just a little smattering of kind of cracker above that. But yeah, you can feel a little tiny layer of rye bread, a little bit of a wholemeal brown bread, and then yeah, above that you start to get these kind of brownie, sponge cakey type layers coming out of the beer. So yeah, for me, yeah, I'd say there is a little bit of like a thicker chocolate brownie layer above the kind of wholemeal brown bready character, but that disappears quite quickly. I'd say that the majority of the malt base in this beer is like a kind of chocolate sponge, and within that kind of chocolate sponge cake layer, you have within the chocolate sponge cake layer, you've got a lot of I would say, yeah, you've got a lot of kind of pecans and almonds and stuff like this, these kind of nutty characters, and they come out a little bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, above the chocolate cakey layer, you start to get pardon me, the actual chocolate side of the beer. So I'd say the chocolate layer is actually that little bit drier almost. So yeah, the chocolate cakey layer is kind of, it does get a little bit drier into the aftertaste, but yeah, the chocolate side of this beer, I'd say at the back of that middle third of your palate, it's maybe like 60% cocoa chocolate, and as you move further and further forward, it's got a little bit more of kind of milk chocolate type quality out of it. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice. So yeah, you have to remember that sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, you've got that chocolate spectrum in there. And I want to say the marshmallows kind of sit, you have this, above the chocolatey layer, you start to get this kind of candied sweetness. It's the marshmallow. The marshmallowy flavour for me kind of sits on top of the chocolate, but then you've got the brown sugary side of things. So in the dead centre of your palate, you've got this kind of big oily circle in there. So you've got a kind of leathery brown sugary character in the base, and then on top of that, you've got the leathery brown sugary character in the base, and then above that, you've got this big kind of treacle molasses sort of thing to the beer. So yeah, the big treacle molasses thing sits in the middle of your palate. Then as you move further out from that, it gets a little bit more sweet and caramelly. Then you've got the leathery brown sugars, and there's wee bits of like toasty biscuit and toasty caramel just around the edges of that. But yeah, I think at this point we've described everything in the middle third of the palate with this beer, and that of course is the most complex part of it. But yeah, let's go to the back third of your palate. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, let's have a little look at that. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, so you can feel the kind of brown bread in the base, or the sort of rye bread in the base, the brown bread on top of it, then the sort of chocolatey sponge with all the nutty character in it. Then above that, you actually start to get the coffee character coming out of the beer. So there's this kind of bready layer with a bit of coffee in it. So for me, the coffee character that we're getting out of this one, it has got a degree of aromaticity to it. It comes across as being like a slower, more earthy sort of roast. And there's wee bits of like black currant, kind of red fruity characters to it as well. So yeah, the coffee bean for me sits in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, and it spreads over into the back third of the palate as well. So yeah, that's pretty interesting with this beer, in all honesty. But yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate then. The base, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you have some really nice, there is a really nice sort of, you get the bread crusty character, or cake edge sort of thing in there. Then you get the cracker, the rye bread, the homemade brown bread, and then yeah, the majority of the back third of your palate is that kind of nutty chocolate sponge cakey type character, but you can feel it's a lot lighter, taller, and more airy for sure. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice in this one, the big sort of cakey layer to it. So yeah, I like how all of that pieces together as well. Yeah, as I said, at the top, on top of all of that, yeah, you can feel a little bit of the drier aspect of the chocolate just creep over the top, and then yeah, you've got that bready sort of thing and some of the drier brown sugars as well, and you can feel the coffee, the sort of drier aspects of the coffee bean and the more fibrous part of the coffee bean just creeps over the top on that back third of your palate too, and that's where you're getting more of the kind of smooth, earthy, roasty character coming out of this one. But above all of that, you've got the yeasty side of the beer. So for me, the yeasty part of the beer at its core, it's got that more kind of grainy, wholemeal, brown bready character in it. There's a little bit of nuttiness to it as well, but then just around the edge of it, it's a wee bit more kind of chocolate spongy, and it has like an almost peanut buttery quality. Then the very edge of it is a more like roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. So yeah, quite an interesting yeasty character to this one. But yeah, you do get a little bit of that almost peanut buttery quality out of the yeasty side of the beer for me. Yeah, I didn't quite expect that, but definitely, yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer, which is of course the most complex part of it. On the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's a wee bit woody. The woody character actually spreads quite far forward, and then you've got the floral notes at the front corners of the palate, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy anyway. So yeah, the way that it goes together, I think, is really nice, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. So yeah, the fruity side of things with this one, I would say it's kind of what you'd expect, and honestly, if you go to that front third of your palate, yeah, there is just a little touch of fruitiness to this beer. But let's look at that front third of your palate then. We've said, yeah, you've got that green, more leafy grassiness there coming out of the beer into the aftertaste. But yeah, front third of your palate, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. So you've got the kind of rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread above that, then that sort of chocolate spongy sort of thing. And the chocolate sponge has got a wee bit of dryness in there, and it's more of the nutty character that's coming out, I would say. The base of that front third of your palate is the kind of cake edge, the rye bread, the brown bread, and then the more kind of chocolate sponge, and a wee bit of the drier, smoother side of the chocolate. Then above that, you've got a really nice kind of oily, yeah, you've got that really nice kind of oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer with this one. So yeah, I do like how that pieces together in this beer for sure. Yeah, so yeah, let's look at that fruity side of thing then, the oily bubble. At the back of that oily bubble, you get a little bit more of a kind of juicy plum, if you like. The beer does have, like in that border region, you do get a little bit of that phenolic, kind of cough syrupy sort of medicine-y sort of thing. So yeah, definitely big juicy plums in there. As you move further down, there's a wee bit of prune, and then as you reach the middle of that, there's maybe a little touch of date in this one, and a little bit of like dry pear and apricot and stuff as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. Little bit of a fig, but then yeah, the front half of the front third of your palate is more like blackcurrant. I think that's fair to say. So yeah, the further into the aftertaste you go with this one, you're getting more dried pear and dried apricot-y sort of flavours out of this. But all in all, it's really nice how this one goes together actually. So yeah, really, really good beer, this one. But yeah, you are going to be sipping on this for a wee while. I've only drank a little bit of it actually doing this review, maybe even, what, about a third of the beer, something like that. So yeah, I'll be sipping on this for the next wee while for sure. But yeah, really, really nicely done beer, this one. Stylistically, I think it probably is an Imperial pastry stout, but it, to me, is like a combination of an Imperial milk stout or an Imperial sweet stout and an Imperial coffee stout as well. But yeah, really good stuff once again from Mortalis, and quite cool to tick this one off the list because I'd seen it a couple of times. So yeah, good stuff. Let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, this beer, I'd say, yeah, full-bodied, mid-range full-bodied. Carbonation's very, very smooth in this one. It does have a degree of like cleanliness to it as well, actually. In upstate New York, I'm guessing you've got some very good water quality, right enough, and you're on the edge of Lake Michigan, if I'm remembering the lakes right. But yeah, it has this real kind of cleanliness to it, but of course you've got that big, like, oily, almost creamy character of this one too because of the style of the beer. But yeah, IBU wise, I think this beer does show you a little bit of bitterness into the aftertaste, maybe like 30 or 40 IBUs, but overall it's kind of sweet and almost slightly sickly in a way. But your malt base, it's a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle with a dry sweetness into the aftertaste, and then yeah, above that you're getting the more kind of solid sweetness. But the sweet side of this beer is kind of drier into the aftertaste. The fruity side of things, a little touch sharper in the beginning, but yeah, very kind of juicy, I would say. But all in all, a really, really nice beer, this one, and I'm glad that I'm glad that I got the chance to try this, because I've been wanting to try it for a wee while. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been really nice to try. So yeah, this was the As Above, So Below, a 10% Imperial Coffee Stout with marshmallow in it, from Mortalis Brewing Company in Avon, near Rochester in upstate New York. Really good beer, this one, but it is a sipper, so I'd recommend that you share this with somebody if you do happen to get a can of it. I can't imagine they sell this one in 4-packs. That would just be insane. In America, they always have their 4-packs and their 6-packs and things. A 4-pack of this would just be crazy, crazy stuff. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Mortalis as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. Until then, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.